All right, guys, bang, bang. I've got the man himself, CZ, here. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Let's start right off. How's your back doing? I know you had
My
the back
back's
surgery.
yeah, my back's doing quite all right now. After the surgery, I feel really good. The doctor says there's a little minor complication, but I don't feel it. And I'm doing physical therapy exercises, and I can walk, I can sit, which before was difficult for me. Sitting was really hard for me. So now I can sit. I don't sit for very long, but I can stand. I can. So I feel pretty good actually. But it's only been 2 months since the surgery, so I'm still taking it quite lightly. I'm still recovering, etc. So I'm just doing regular, smaller, lighter exercises, just for mostly physical therapy type of exercises, trying to recover. Yeah.
All right, we got to make sure that you're healthy because Binance is counting on you along with most of crypto. And then let's just jump in. Maybe you can give us a quick update on Binance itself. I don't know if you wanted to share kind of any latest metrics or anything, but just how are things going since last time we talked?
So Binance is yeah. So especially recently, the numbers we're seeing are just phenomenal. We're seeing in general roughly about 5x more volumes than before, like since the sort of the coronavirus took over. So business-wise, the platform is like doing really well. Both futures and now they also even in this environment, our market share has been gaining. So Binance Futures is now the very clearly number one futures platform in the last couple of weeks. Business is doing really well for us. We know there's a lot of so even in other exchanges that we hear, I think they're seeing more traffic. I think it could be due to a number of reasons. It could be people just bored at home, nothing to do. So all the online businesses are doing well. And then it could also be that the overall macroeconomic issues with quantitative easing, people moving slowly back into crypto. So it could be any number of those reasons. And but overall, business is doing well.
Awesome. It feels a lot like when you get volatility in the traditional markets, you also see the volatility in crypto, and then that volatility leads to trading or kind of just interest in doing something. Like people don't like to sit there when all the prices are moving and feel like they're not doing anything, which is
Yeah.
obviously probably pretty good for the business as well.
Yeah, I mean, volatility is generally good for the exchange business. So for exchanges, the worst is when the market is flat. So when it's flat, there's no one's trading. When it's volatility, there's always high volumes. But usually when it's flat at a low price, it's not as good as when it's flat at a high price. So when the prices are high, it's always good for the exchanges. So for our business, we really want to see the price being high. High volatility is okay, but generally speaking, the higher the price, the better.
For sure. And then how has COVID-19 kind of impacted? I know you guys had last time we talked 400, 500 employees, kind of 40 different countries and pretty distributed already. But have you
Yeah.
seen any impact from the virus itself on the business?
So again, I think on this point, I think if anything, it was positive for Binance because we're quite used to. So we have been working remotely pretty much throughout the last 2 years, and we're quite used to it. And a lot of our internal conversations is like, oh, people call this quarantine. So, so I think, and also it kind of, to be honest, I think it slowed down a few of our competitors. So some of our competitors who had more centralized offices, they had more to adjust. Sending people home, people may or may not have the right equipment. Their team structures and daily routines may or may not be structured to facilitate just working remotely, right? So working remotely does require a little bit of a difference in mentality. A lot of conference calls, a lot of Zoom, a lot of Google Meets, a lot of other things. So I think for us, we are quite used to it, and also we've seen a lot more flood in job applications. So people are really applying for jobs more. So now we're hiring very aggressively, which was actually difficult. So sort of towards second half of last year, I think we will actually try to compete with other organizations, the internet companies, etc. So, but now we're actually seeing a lot more candidates that's available in the market. So overall, things are actually all right. I think given that we're the online remote working type of business, we're quite the coronavirus did not impact us as negatively as we would have expected. But we do understand there's a lot of other people who are feeling like a lot of hardship out there, and we want to be able to help. So that's why we're kind of doing a lot of charity work, etc.
Yeah, it's one of these things where, as we've talked to, our portfolio of 100 plus companies, what we keep saying to them is, look, there's two ways to think about what's happening right now. One, you've got to have the defensive mindset to make sure your balance sheet's strong enough to kind of survive through whatever, this ends up being from an economic standpoint. But two is, if you're in a good position, you can actually be hyper aggressive and actually steal a lot of market share. And it sounds like that's kind of the approach you're taking here is you're in a good position. You've got a business that's actually benefiting from a lot of the volatility and the virus stuff. And so rather than just be defensive the whole time, you can actually get aggressive and try to build out and scale and really gain market share right now.
Yeah, I absolutely think that way. So for us, I think we had a strong balance sheet before. We had very strong revenue, strong profits. We were not relying on burning money before. So we were growing, like before our limitation factor was actually just our speed to hire good people, right? So just talking, getting all the candidates in, talking with them, interviewing them, and then agree on a deal, compensation, etc. So right now, that problem is not is eased up a lot, and we're seeing business demand on the platform growing, and so I think we're kind of unique in that way, where there's a strong balance sheet supporting the business, and this is why we are very aggressive on both hiring and also looking at acquisitions, etc. So we're just progressing on both fronts.
Yeah, speaking of hiring, I know a lot of executives take different approaches to it. Some want to be really involved and some basically hire people that they trust and they kind of take it. What's your approach to the hiring process and how involved are you?
On the hiring process, on the senior hires, I am involved. So I like to interview the senior hires before, I kind of do the last, depending on if they're reporting to me directly, then I do a very in-depth interview. If they're reporting to somebody who's reporting to me, then I have a more casual chat. But I think one of my strengths is actually I'm a pretty good judge of character. So I talk to them for a few minutes, and then I try to figure out, hey, this guy passionate about crypto? Is this guy a legit, a genuine character? Does he know his stuff? So on the technical side, for tech, like programming technology interviews, I'm pretty good. Like I can ask a couple simple questions and get a very good feel of where the guy is. For some other roles, I'm less, because those other roles are not my background, so I'm less capable of judging the skill sets that accurately. But then I just rely that on the team. I rely on the team for that. But I do talk with the candidate to just get a feel of the personality match, culture match, etc. So I think I have a pretty good feel for just interacting with people, even though I may or may not know their technical expertise. So I do get involved in the senior hires. But we're hiring so many people that there's a lot of guys I'm not mad. I don't even know their name. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess this then leads to like, there's so much going on, right? And I think one of kind of the resounding messages I hear from CEOs right now is, hey, we've got our just normal business operations that we've got to worry about, make sure our business is strong. And then you layer in the virus stuff, and there's kind of this health crisis. So I want to make sure that my team's healthy, their families are healthy, et cetera. But that health crisis, the response globally is now creating this economic crisis, right? Where you see the macroeconomy kind of slowing down. Maybe just share your thoughts on what you're seeing from the macroeconomy. Are you worried about anything there, and kind of how you're thinking through more of kind of the response to the virus, more so than just the virus itself?
Sure. I think there's so that's a pretty, so there's a lot of aspects to it. I think for the Binance team, I've asked the Binance team to work from home way early. Like, so when this thing's kind of brewing in China, I just told everyone, so look, just work from home. So I think that was like end of January, early February. I just said, look, just work from home. And I also asked and our team's pretty used to it. Our team's like, they sometimes congregate in a coffee shop or stuff like that when they're in the same city. But I just said, let's just be more careful about it. And we also make sure our internal employee or the team members, what we call, we don't really use the word employees that much. So I also make sure that we have supplies that we secured through various channels, and we make sure most of our team members do have good supplies. even our members right now in Europe, we have shipped their parents supplies masks where they couldn't get them right now. So we took a lot of precaution to ensure safety of our employees, and we all encourage them to work from home. Just don't go out that often, and they typically work from home anyway, so they're very used to it. At a higher level, at a bigger scale, in different countries in the world, I think this thing's going to last multiple months. I think it's going to last. I think coming summer, this virus may subside, but I think we got to be very careful. If you look at past pandemics, there's very often a second wave come autumn, and I think right now we're witnessing. This is like a leadership test for a lot of countries, right? So countries who are well organized, even if you look at China, even though it happened earlier there, but they actually had I think the numbers may be too low. The numbers may or may not be accurate, but the situation is they do have it under control. Most guys are returning to normal. The work is returning to normal. Other countries are still fighting it, and other countries are still losing the battle with it. To be honest, especially America, I think the numbers says the results are there. So I think we're still at the ramp up stage where we haven't seen the plateau. So that's very worrying, and I think that will definitely have an economic effect. I think back in February, March, people in some countries, or including the United States, some people are saying, "Oh no, this thing just happening, impacting China. Nothing's going to impact the U.S." I think we live in one global economy. There's no escape. So I think we're seeing that playing out. I think it's going to be multiple months. It's going to have very severe impact on the economy, on jobs, etc. So I think we've got to prepare this for the long run. And afterwards, I also think even after a few months after this passes, we're going to see a new economy. So things are going to be different. People will be, the social norms are going to be different. So I don't know how different it will be, but I think in the back of people's heads, people will. I think even come autumn or the next winter, people will be very cautious about this thing. It depends on whether we discover a vaccine or not. So all of those things play a factor. But most countries are banning travel. I think travel's gone for the next, I don't know, half a year or so, to a large extent. So travel within the country may be allowed, but I think people are very cautious about it, even today. So there's a lot of restaurants are being hit really hard. Movies, theaters are being hit really hard. So I think a lot of businesses will change. But also in this turbulent environment, there's a lot more opportunities, right? So when one business, unfortunately, when one business goes down, other businesses thrive. So I think online businesses will do well. International business, the virtual aspect of the cryptocurrencies actually helps a lot. I think cryptocurrency is going to see a fairly strong boost, to be honest, combined with quantitative easing, depression, the countries have no other option but to print a lot of money right now, and that's gonna those money right now is not free flowing into the economy, but once they start flowing, cost of goods, most prices are gonna go up very dramatically, and I think cryptocurrency will go up much more, unproportionally higher. So so I think all of those things are gonna happen, and I think people in the crypto industry are generally in a very good spot. So I think we just gotta. I think we want to work really hard. I think it's especially important to work really hard during this economic turbulent times, because there are new opportunities, and the guys who can grab these new opportunities there's much more new opportunities right now than there were before. I also think most likely more banks and more financial institutions are going to look at cryptocurrency. They're more willing to work with cryptocurrency exchanges, payment services, etc. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be tough. But when the going gets tough, the tough gets going.
Yeah, it's really interesting because on the economic side, one of the things that people I think are missing is just the economy is not going to recover until people are allowed to leave their home. Right. I mean, it's just, what are you going to do from your house? You basically are going to pretty much, you can do things in crypto. Maybe you'll buy some things online, but most of your economic activity is going to go to zero. And so you just can't get an economy back if everyone's sitting at home, which I think is kind of a missing point, because there's a lot of people who say, oh, this is a 2-week thing. And it's I don't think that this is 2 weeks.
No, it's not 2 weeks. So in the ideal world, if the world is really, really well organized, and we say, oh, look, let's agree to stay home. Everyone stays home for 2 weeks, and whoever has symptoms go to the hospital. Whoever doesn't, then are done. Yes, but in the ideal world, yes. But humans are not organized that way, and we're seeing very poor leadership across different countries, right? So if everybody started lockdown end of January for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, we're done. And very, very, very few number of people will get sick, but people don't act that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. Let's switch gears. You recently announced a pretty big purchase while everyone else is running around and worried about surviving. You guys announced that you're purchasing CoinMarketCap. Maybe just talk a little bit about kind of how that deal came together, how you originally met them, and then kind of what the logic behind the acquisition is.
Sure. So I've known Brandon. So I've used CoinMarketCap for from 2013, 14 when they started. And back then there was like a number of other sort of data aggregators, but CoinMarketCap just grown to be the most popular one by far. So and after we started, so it was like basically about 2 years ago. I was just sort of paying Brandon, just sort of very occasionally, not frequently, just sort of, hey, how are you doing? What are your plans, etc. So I've been paying him over time with a sort of interest of saying potentially working together more, a closer partnership, or potentially an acquisition. But I didn't sort of mention it in that terms. I was just sort of, hey, look, I was just trying to understand what his mentalities are. And it was really towards the end of last year, like a few months ago, we met again and we kind of discussed, and we both felt there was interest. And so we talked. I think we met twice, and we sort of discussed the numbers, and we came to a term pretty quickly. And it was a very simple deal. So it's like there's no complicated stuff going on. And then from there, we were just like getting lawyers to execute the deal, which took a while. None of us went back none of us thought about to renegotiate the terms of the deal. Even in this economic turbulent times, I think like for me, I'm looking at this thing at a very, very long-term play. It's not like, okay, how much is it worth today or tomorrow or the day before? So we don't think in that kind of terms. Whereas I think, look, if we right now, I think it's one of the most valuable platforms in the industry, and I think you'll grow another 10x, 100x. I think the higher value for that is not to make it just service Binance.com, the exchange. I think it should continue to grow its original purpose in providing data access for crypto and be the landing page of crypto, have information on there. So I think CoinMarketCap will continue to grow in that way. And I actually think that they have not been expanding super aggressively because it's a small team. They've been growing organically, they're selling ads, etc. Like, look, by working with Binance, we acquire it, and we also have more room to fund it. So I think we just want to continue to fund the growth of it. There's naturally a lot of synergies with Binance.com, but there's also naturally a lot of synergies with every other exchange out there. So CoinMarketCap will continue to maintain neutrality and independence, and any other exchange who wants to continue to work with them, I think most of them definitely will, because they are by far the largest single referral for any exchange. So I think, and they will continue to work with other exchanges. So that's fine. So that's kind of how the deal went together. It's actually pretty simple.
Got it. And in terms of kind of when you talk about this 10x or 100x expansion, like what is your vision, at least, of kind of that path? Like, how do you actually 10x that? Is that, let's take the Binance playbook of kind of super aggressive growth and just send some of our folks over and help them do that? Or is there something else that's a little bit more complex in how you do it?
Sure. I actually think it's actually something much more simpler. I think we just got to wait for the market to grow. So I think basically if the entire industry doesn't grow, then it's unlikely for CoinMarketCap to go 10x or even for Binance to go 10x. I think, like, look, CoinMarketCap is by far the largest data aggregator or data provider site, and Binance.com is one of the largest exchanges, and both in futures, spot, margin. So So I think, but like even if we kill all the other industry players, we're not gonna grow another, I don't know, 10x or definitely not 100x. So I think the goal is definitely to we're definitely over like 10% market share in a lot of places. So we don't have room to grow 10x even if we kill everybody in the space. So I think the goal is to make the industry bigger, and to make the industry bigger, we actually can't grow alone. We actually want to grow with other industry players. So we want other exchanges to grow. We want other data providers to grow, information providers to grow, because there's like 200 different countries in the world, and a lot of different geographies, a lot of different cultures, a lot of different banking channels, fiat channels, etc. There's only so much we can do ourselves, even though we're one of the biggest players in the market, but we need to grow the industry bigger. We need other people to grow it with us. So I think right now, if you look at the industry, probably only one in 1,000 people have crypto. So there's at least 1,000 times to grow. And even that is not a very good measurement. I think if you judge the potential market share of taxi, or the market size of taxis for Uber, that's not the potential market size. They're going to expand that market. So I think in crypto, we're looking at the same thing. Crypto will be able to service new business types, new opportunities that the traditional fiat world does not touch or cannot service. So I think basically, in my mind, the trick is really just to grow the industry. So it's not so much, hey, let's give them more. We will definitely want them to hire more and grow the team a bit more. I think the team is a bit too small. But other than that, I think we're just going to continue to build innovative products and provide services that other people want to use. And hopefully the industry will grow. And I'm pretty confident the industry will grow.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm there with you on that. One of the most asked questions I got when I asked people for questions to ask you, and obviously you don't have to answer this if you don't want, but people want to know, how was the acquisition paid for? Was it cash, stock, or BNB? And I said, look, I'll ask him, but I don't think he's going to answer that one.
So it's not that I don't want to answer. That part is covered by the NDA, so I actually can't answer it. But it's a fairly straightforward deal. So there's nothing too complicated about it. And to be honest, for us, it doesn't matter what the method is. So if it's BNB cash, it's the same thing. If it's cash, BNB is cash or BTC is cash to us. When people say cash, they probably mean US dollars. That's fine. We will come. If we need that, we can just sell BTC or sell BNB and convert to cash. To us, it's the same thing, to be honest. But it's a very straightforward deal. There's nothing complicated about it.
One of the things that I think you said early on that I remember saying, hey, I like that guy, is you said, look, I got no more fiat left, right? I spent it all and got all crypto.
Yes. So, but look, if we have to spend fiat, then we just sell some crypto, but we don't hold fiat. So whatever fiat we need to spend, we just sell crypto and we spend it, and then we'll have no fiat left again. So that's kind of how we operate.
Got it. One of the things that I think you've done very differently than especially exchanges in the United States, et cetera, is you've made some pretty big bets on non-US countries. So obviously India is a big one, a couple of others. What are you seeing in the non-US countries right now, given the global instability? Are you seeing kind of a ton of interest into crypto? Are you seeing expansion there? Maybe just highlight some of that.
Sure. I think every country is very different. US is definitely one of the most developed economies, and it's a very strong economy. So there's a lot of money flowing around. Trading, institutional trading is very established. And then there's a lot of money to be made in those markets. So the markets are bigger. So the US accounts for, like, I don't know, the world's overall the world's 20%, 20+% GDP, with only 4% of the population. So per capita, if you reach one user, then the value per user is much higher. For any business. So even like social media, trading platforms, etc. So a lot of guys are focused on those type of markets. China is a very different one. China's getting, the people is getting relatively rich. There's a lot of rich guys. There's a lot of guys with discretionary spending power, and online businesses, mobile businesses, internet businesses are very developed. So that's another very interesting market. If you look at big countries, the regulations tends to be very expensive. So you got to have like a team of lawyers, apply for different licenses, deal with a lot of different regulators, etc. And also because the traditional financial economy is very established, there's actually more incumbent players to that blocks the growth of crypto. So whereas in countries like, say, for example, if you look at Africa or even India, the traditional financial services are not super established. There's actually more opportunity for you to grow. And India is like the second most populous country in terms of people in the world, and it's got 1.3 billion people, and that's there's a lot of opportunity there. There was a lot of uncertainty in terms of the regulations, and very luckily we placed a bet before that, before it was clear, and the results turned out to be favorable. But when we placed the bet, it wasn't betting on the outcome of the regulatory changes. It was like that was a really good team. Michelle leads a really good team. They have a good product. They understand the local market, and we ask ourselves, right? So am I going to be able to go to India, build a team there, and compete there? Going to be pretty difficult for me. I think I do have the senses to realize where the shortcomings for myself or our current teams are. I understand the different culture norms, different business cultures, different psychologies in different markets, and just every market is very different. So in markets where we feel comfortable operating, then we go in and operate ourselves. Where in markets where we're lucky enough to meet a strong local team, then we work with the local team. And also, if you look at, for example, a different market, Africa, right? It's got 1.2 billion people for the whole continent. It's divided into a lot of different countries, but there the people are still getting used to like smartphones, and only 11% of the population have bank accounts. So they can actually just skip bank accounts. We don't need to bank them. So we no longer need to bank their own bank. We can just give them a cell phone and an app. There's a lot of different opportunities there. So I think a lot of people focus on US, and we are now too. So we have a partner there, Catherine Cooley. I'm sure you have spoken to her. So US is a very important economy, but it's one of the countries in the world. I think crypto's value is really when you connect different countries in the world. That's where the value really, really shines. So that's kind of our approach and philosophy.
Yeah. Are there any countries that maybe people aren't thinking about that you're like, look, I'm really excited? Obviously, India is a big one, and you've kind of made some moves there. But are there other countries that you want to kind of highlight that you think people should be paying attention to?
I think almost every country is quite interesting, to be honest. India is definitely one of them. A number of countries, South Africa, Nigeria, Uganda, those are really interesting as well. Because in those countries, the internet is getting there. People do have the number of people having smartphones is really increasing. And what other countries? There are some really interesting countries as well. Vietnam is really active. Turkey is really active in terms of cryptocurrencies. So we're fairly active there. Our user base is fairly active there. There's a lot of different countries in the world. I mean, we try to build a platform that's really neutral towards that's kind of geography independent, and it's much easier to do with just crypto to crypto. It's a lot harder when you want to touch fiat, but unfortunately today most of the money is still in fiat, so we still got to go country by country to bring them in.
Yeah, it almost feels like there's the two parallel worlds being built, and I think about it. If you take the totality of that, it's like what percentage of the total economic activity or financial activity, whatever, is in crypto? I don't know, 1% might be hyper aggressive, right? Like it's very, very small percent. And as the crypto industry grows, that will become a bigger and bigger percent. And that to me is like one of the biggest metrics of measuring progress is just if you can get to 5% is crypto, 10%, 20%, that's where I think we'll really, really start to see some material impact on the world. Yeah.
I'm guessing my numbers tell me that we're at about 0.1%. So like really just 1 in 1,000. So on the positive, on the negative side, it's really tiny. So we're basically working in a very tiny market right now. Positive side is like the growth potential is really high. So we just got to make sure that, and I think the growth will come. And I think the growth will be sped up by this right now, all the turmoil in the current economic environments. So I'm pretty confident about it. I think we are in the right industry. We are the super early adopters right now, and we just gotta. Once we grow to 1%, I think we'll see 10x, and of course 10% we'll see 100x.
Yeah, for sure. US, you guys partnered and brought Binance US with Catherine to what many people I think thinks is one of the most important geographies in the world for this. What's going on there, and how do you feel it's going?
Yeah, I think US is going quite well. US, I think with overall the teams, my understanding is the Binance US team is taking a very careful and a solid approach. So they're progressing in very careful manners because they are spending a lot of time on regulatory compliance, getting licenses, etc. So hopefully they will be able to to turn on additional states very soon. At the same time, with the states they're capable of serving right now, they're copying over more and more features from Binance.com from the technology platform products perspective. So staking, more selection of coins. They have a very rigorous selection process for listing coins, but I think they do have a larger selection than the other players in the US. The trading fees are much lower. The trading fees is about a third of what other platforms charge. The retail guys may or may not care too much about it, but slowly we're seeing the shift over. I think that they're just going very steady. So I think, and their market share is actually slowly increasing. Most people may or may not understand that, or may or may not notice just yet. But I think overall things are going really. I'm very pleased with the progress Binance US is seeing. So I think just give it time. The other players have been in the market for like, I don't know, 8-9 years. So they are very entrenched, and the competition is high. The other platforms are very high quality, and they're very credible platforms. So I think that's good because then they also help grow the industry. So I think Binance US overall, though, I'm pretty happy with the progress.
Yeah, it's one of these interesting things where the U.S. specifically, you have to have the regulatory bent, right? You almost have to go slow to get the approvals. There's other countries, obviously, where you don't need to do that, and so it kind of adds some challenges there. One of the things that you recently announced is this mining pool. Maybe talk a little bit about what exactly you guys are going to build and kind of what the logic is there.
Sure. I mean, to be honest, it was like one of the team members said, "Oh, look, we should build a mining pool, and this is how to do it." I said, "Well, that makes sense." So do you know how to? Do you want to do it? She says yes. Again, it's a girl, and then she just went ahead and doing. And in my head, originally, I thought it was just going to be a BTC mining pool. But she's also doing POS for EOS. So now we're kind of having the EOS nodes, swiping votes, exchanging votes. Like you gotta do I didn't know this before. You gotta exchange like 21 different votes with like different parties and all this stuff going on, like just horse trading, stuff like that. So, but at the end of the day, the goal is to build both a POW, like for Bitcoin, and also POS for most other coins, mining pool, and also be able to support other non-mining but staking pools, staking coins as well. So and so all of this are sort of interest generating or income generating products for our users. So you can for Bitcoin, the miners will put their mining power into a pool and will do that, and they'll get coins. For staking coins, you lock your number of coins, and then you get an interest rate or reward. Also, this is from a user perspective, this is very similar to the loan product we have, the lending product we have. So you lend your product for the margin traders, you get an interest. For the users, it's the same thing. And then we're also rolling out the loan business. So all of that ties into what I call the Binance Finance product suite. So all of the financial products in our platform. So that's all tying together. So they're building it. I think the mining pool is going to be launched soon, from what I hear. But again, it's a fairly independent team. They're running with it. The team leader and a couple of the senior guys on the team comes to me once in a while for like, I don't know, different budget requests, some decisions. I usually flip a coin, just say go for it.
This is the magic of Binance, right? It is the fact that you just find really talented, smart, ambitious people, put them together, and they come up with these ideas, and you basically are giving them the green light, and they go and they build it and use the resources and kind of distribution you have. And next thing you know, you probably will end up building one of the largest mining pools, right?
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, it's not launched yet, but typically we do have the network effect where I think number one, we have the brand, we have the number of users, and a lot of big miners are already trading on us. They mine and then they move the coins to Binance, and they either sell to USDT or BUSD. So they're already trading with us. So I think the network effect is there, and also given the network effect, all of the services we provide, we can provide at the lowest fees. So if you look at the market, our fees are typically the lowest, sometimes by a factor of 2 or 3x. So it's going to be the same model for mining pool. The fees will be very low. The fees that we charge will be very low. So then the users get most of the rewards that they're supposed to get. So I think, I do hope that you will become one of the sort of major players in the space.
Yeah, that's a really kind of important strategic decision. Maybe elaborate on that a little bit, right? It's almost like kind of the Amazon approach of, hey, let's deliver as much back to the user or customer as possible, and then they'll stay with us for a long period of time. Obviously, a lot of your competitors are charging higher fees and kind of extracting more value. Why did you choose to go with the low fee model? And then kind of how has that thought process changed over time?
Sure. I think there's a number of factors. There's the mentality factor of the different founders. How much do they believe in this industry, whether they're short-term or long-term? And then there's the skill that we already have or people already have. So to be honest, when we first start, the goal is just to survive, right? So just to get to cash flow break even and be able to survive. And potentially, if we're not there quite yet, then we may even want to raise some money from some investors that they take a little bit of the risk, and then also gets rewarded later on. So initially, it's that kind of thought process. And once you're over that hurdle, it's like, well, now the mentality really comes into play. It's quite, to be honest, once you have a reasonable exchange running, you have like decent number of users, etc. It's not that hard to make some money. I mean, you will be able to make some money. But then as most platforms or most businesses, the more you charge, the slower you grow. And the more you charge, you may even like actually have a short-term business. The uncertainty in this industry also causes people to be more short-sighted. For example, if you establish an exchange in a country and the regulations change every 3 months, then you are kind of forced to be more short-sighted and just sort of look, let's make as much money as we can as quickly as possible, and then when things change, we just pack up and leave, and we would have made our money. Or at least recovered our investments. But I think I've been in the industry for a long time, even before Binance. So I have a much longer term play. I believe crypto will be the super future. Like if you look at 10, 20, 50 years, 100 years from now. So I have a much longer vision on this. And luckily, we got over the bump for the sort of survival mode very quickly, like within a few months. And it was also within those first few months, like even with the first quarter after we launched the platform, we seen some of the regulations change in China that impacted us quite severely. But actually afterwards, looking back, it was actually a very positive influence. It actually drove a lot of users to us. But at the time, it was like quite tricky. So we gone through the initial sort of phases very quickly. And right now we have a platform that has scale, and we have the brand. And I think right now, I have a much longer term sort of play. I just want to be able to service users for the next 20, 50, 100 years, hopefully. So so for us, it's really not about making all the money right now. So businesses very often have to decide between short-term profits versus long-term gains. For us, everything's long-term. So this is why we're still investing in large deals in this environment. It's not about the next 3 months. It's not about the next year. It's about like more than that. So, and also we're not a publicly listed company, so we don't have this sort of Wall Street analyst calls, etc. We do have a token, but the token's getting more and more decentralized, and the token's doing fine. So I think basically we have just the mentality aspect of it is really important. So for this reason, we really want to protect our users. So we view our users much more than our short-term revenue. So we do make money. We make money very transparently. People trade and they pay commission fee. So that's pretty much it, really. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned a public company. Any interest in ever going public, or do you enjoy being a private company without all of the short-term pressures?
Yeah, so I don't think we're going public anytime soon. We're not preparing for it. We're not prepared for it. So we're kind of running the company in a direction that's not really fit for IPO. So a lot of the decisions we make very fundamentally shapes of the organization. I don't even use the word company that often. So it's kind of hard to IPO that kind of the IPO role doesn't really fit our type of organization, which is very decentralized. I also don't believe in the IPO game. I think that game's really way old. The system is really broken. Basically, the entrepreneurs are no longer, number one, the entrepreneurs are no longer making the money. They basically have to yield to VCs very early on to be able to grow a large platform, because to grow a platform, you do need heavy investments. And typically entrepreneurs have the skills, may or may not have the skills, but they don't have the money. And when the institutional investors come in, when the VCs come in, they want returns. They like, to be honest, very few VCs care about the vision. Most guys who care about the vision will be building stuff themselves. There's very few that do care about the visions. I don't want to offend everybody, but mostly VCs have a fund that have a fixed term, either it's 5 years or 8 years or 10 years, and they need to show returns. They need to raise the next fund, etc. And they naturally want to have pressure to sort of cash out, and then they want the firms to IPO. And then when the firms IPO, the VCs, the CEOs are typically giving a mandate to get the price to a certain point, and they usually have a deal. And then the CEOs get a bonus when they get to that point. The VCs cash out at that point, and then the retail investors get left holding the bag. And hopefully, if the company does well in the future, great. But there's a lot of risks there. But everybody knows how to play that game. So this is why the CEOs gets a lot of money. This is why the VCs structure the deals that way. I don't think it's super beneficial. I think there's a better structure that can be achieved. We have a lot more freedom. We are luckily we are cash flow positive, and we can dictate our own growth at the rate we grow. We can fund relatively new ideas. Sometimes some really wild ideas. So we're kind of operating as a startup, but also as an investment arm, and we have a lot of experiments going on. So we have a lot of freedom to try this kind of stuff, and we have a very united team. So we don't have a board telling us what to do, etc. So I think, yeah, I don't see a need to IPO. And also, given the regulatory uncertainty in many jurisdictions, it's still unclear to see how a cryptocurrency exchange is going to IPO. So we prefer to probably let somebody else do that first, and we don't need to be the first one there.
Yeah, that brings up BNB, which I think there's a lot of folks, I think Multicoin, a bunch of these people have kind of written these long analysis on the idea that BNB, if you don't go the IPO route, can serve as a way to really drive kind of shareholder value. But in this unique kind of new model, maybe talk a little bit about where BNB is today, and then kind of how you see that evolving over time.
Sure. I think we structure BNB as very much a utility token. So it does not represent security in Binance or any of the Binance affiliated entities. It's a freely traded coin that we used an ICO back in 2017 to raise some funds to bootstrap the platform. And then from there, I think today it's grown about 130x from in the last 2 years. At the peak, it's grown about 400x, but there's fluctuations. And there's this common discussion between what's the difference between shares and the token. So now that's a pretty interesting dynamic. So I think the shares and tokens could be separate, but especially if you want to, if you can say, look, the tokens are used in our ecosystem. For let's not use Binance. Let's use say a gaming company, right? So you issue a token, people can use it to pay for, I don't know, game, virtual merchandise like weapons and stuff like that. So then they can use that in the game. And then you have the company shares that you can sort of, the company shares are worth however much. You can look at the income, profits, etc. of the company and determine the price of that. Whereas we have chosen not to, or at least for now, we're not to sort of monetize the shares aspects of Binance. So right now, we don't see a need for it right now, and a lot of companies stay private. Even like if you look at Bloomberg's company is still private. It's a valuable company, but Bloomberg makes money from profits, so he didn't really sell a lot of shares to make money. So I think right now our focus really just, and I think right now if we say we issue like Binance shares and raise a lot of money and continue to do that, you actually dilute some of the value in the BNB ecosystem. So we actually just want to say, look, we will continue to push BNB to be used in more in our ecosystem and also in our partners' ecosystems. And that's what we're going to be focused on. And we're not going to so I'm at least right now, I'm not really thinking about monetizing the shares at all. Actually, I have an idea which I don't talk to people often about. I eventually want to make Binance a real DAO, like a real decentralized autonomous operation. And if we do that, then one of the things we will have to do is we will likely have to forego the valuable shares. So
you got to explain this a little bit, because this is, I think, kind of the extreme end of the non-IPO path, which is you essentially decentralize the entire thing. And you being the founder, it's a big financial decision, because you basically would say the equity in what I've built is going to be worth zero. You're not going to have the payday from the equity, and you now have this DAO. But if you have the cash flow, there's obviously value there. Maybe talk through exactly like what would that world look like, and then what would that mean for you and the rest of the team?
Sure. I actually don't know what that word would look like, to be honest. This is new territory, right? So we're kind of experimenting ourselves. And so we're kind of on a virgin territory. We just landed on this land, and we're still exploring. We can see there's a forest, but we don't know what's in the forest. We can see there's a hill. We don't know what's behind it, kind of thing. So in my mind, we're kind of in that territory in terms of organizational structure, etc. We do have team members who have ESOPs. We still do have a couple external shareholders, so this aspect is it is an interesting topic to sort of explore and discuss. But I do think a company who has an organization who have very strong cash flow are able to take care of their employees, shareholders, etc. So there are different ways to monetize, and this is why it ties into the long-term play that we have. I mean, you can sell your shares, and basically the shares encompass future value, right? So the value of the shares of a company encompass how much money can be made later on. Whereas if you just do a dividend or a profit split to people, then it's just how much money you've earned so far. But if you take a longer version, say, look, there are many companies who does not go IPO. There are many founders who taking Bloomberg, for example, like the guy's really rich, and I think he still owns 70% of the shares of the company, and they never really sold anything else. Merrill Lynch was one of the investors, probably still is. Well, they probably changed hands because Merrill may have had its own financial issues. So in that aspect, I think there's I think as long as you get investors and you get team members who are into the same vision, who are here for the long-term play, then that's less of a problem. We actually looked at a new idea which I think we invented actually. I named it, and so I named it, and then our team kind of is still polishing it. We call ETOP. So instead of employee stock option, we call it employee token options. We actually don't like the word employee. We call them team members, but that'll be TTOP. It's kind of cheesy. But overall, though, we want to say, look, of our profits, we can distribute some to in tokens to our team members, and the tokens are interesting because the tokens value fluctuates with how well the ecosystem is doing, and then this way the team members are incentivized to sort of grow the ecosystem, not just the corporate value, not just the enterprise value, but more of the sort of ecosystem value. And I think that's actually more aligned with what we want to achieve right now. We want to build out the ecosystem. We want to decentralize sort of the enterprise aspect of it. Even though right now, I think Binance.com, especially the trading platforms, is a large revenue generator. But things could change. Like we have a DEX, it's not super big right now. But things could change in 3 years, 5 years. So We are experimenting with that, and I think it's super fascinating. And but if you ask me, like, look, what's the blueprint? Is it 100% going to go this way? I don't really know, to be honest, because it's all virgin territory. We're experimenting, and we may make some mistakes, and we have to readjust. But we are exploring with the team together. So and I think whatever we find out that works, we will be very happy to share with the community, and hopefully other organizations will be able to follow. Binance is unique. Yeah, Binance is unique in this way. We actually started as more centralized organization. We kind of pushing this way, whereas other like projects like Ethereum, they did start much more decentralized. So it's a bit different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting because basically what you're talking about, like, what is equity, right? Equity is a claim on cash flow, it's a claim on a company's assets, and then obviously kind of an option on future profits, et cetera. Really what you're talking about here is like, a lot of that is more speculative in nature because you're looking into the future. But if you've actually built a business that works, that has cash flow, et cetera, what now you say to people is, well, if you're a quote unquote investor or equity holder, if you will, really what you're just doing is you're getting a percent of profits, right? And if that's paid out, it changes the dynamic. And then obviously, if you're an employee, would you rather have something that represents, potential future performance, or would you rather have a percent of profits today? I think most employees actually would probably want, percent of profits today. It's better short term, and two, it's much more tangible in many cases.
Yeah, I think and also there's a very subtle difference between profits of a traditional organization and profits of a crypto organization. Mm-hmm. So in crypto, even if our profits are in BNB today, let's say we distribute BNB to some of our team members or BTC, there's an implied gross value of that profit even afterwards. So it's not like, okay, no, I received $100 and that's it. The dollar will only devalue. So there's even after they receive the profits, because it's given mostly in tokens, and actually a large number do hold it, and they don't really sell. They are aligned with sort of overall ecosystem growth, not just the company growth. So they are aligned to sort of like let's get a Brave browser deal. Let's get more partnerships. Let's do all this other stuff to grow the ecosystem, which actually works really, really well for us, which is totally aligned with what I think we should be doing.
Yeah, I love it. One of the other questions that a lot of people had was around security tokens, which I think is related here. Kind of what are you seeing in the security token world? And is that something that Binance would ever kind of dip their toe into?
Sure. I think there's a lot of potential in the security tokens world. But honestly, though, I think most of the implementations today are too restrictive. Mm-hmm. So most of the implementations today is just taking the piece of paper that used to represent a security and put it on the blockchain. And on the blockchain, I've seen a lot of implementations where on the smart contract has a wide list of addresses that you can send people to. That kind of defeats the purpose of blockchainizing it. It doesn't have the freedom that you can send it to anybody, anywhere in the world, etc. And to be honest, I don't see that we have so much issues with that piece of paper. Very few people are forging it. There's very easy ways to sort of verify that piece of paper actually represents shares in a company. So I think most of the implementations I've seen so far are relatively rudimentary, and they don't solve the fundamental problem of actually having a security token on the blockchain, freely traded around the world. Anybody can participate, that kind of stuff. That would require, I think, a lot of regulatory changes. So it's not just I think the technology is there for sure, but the regulatory hurdles in different countries are not solved. I actually think I actually am guessing on this front. Again, I could be wrong because this is kind of guessing into the future. I think the countries who are less developed in the security space will actually be easier to change, because like if you take a country like United States, they have so many securities laws. Changing all of them is just it's a big train that's already moving in one direction. It's going to be difficult to change that in a different direction. Whereas in countries where the securities market is not super developed, they may want to jumpstart their securities markets. And what we have seen is actually many countries want to securitize their real estate. They want to securitize their companies so that they can raise money internationally. So for countries that's less developed, that they actually want the money to go to their country. And they don't want whitelist in smart contracts. They don't want all of these restrictions. So I think things are going to play out differently. I think the market size is huge. We can all see that. How much of that size is going to convert right into crypto, I think we'll have to see. Our position is basically, look, we do monitor the space. We are interested in it. I think there's already a few early players who are sort of plowing the way, pushing it. And we'll just see how they do. And if they do well, we can partner with them. We can work with them. We can launch something our own. To some extent, we can copy them, and we can innovate. So all those options are open. And but for the STO specifically, Binance's strength is not in dealing with regulators. So we don't have I don't have a lawyer background. We don't have teams of lawyers chasing different regulators, etc. I think there are people who have those backgrounds who are much more fitted into chasing those type of businesses. Hopefully, those guys will make some leeway, and then if they do, then we have a technology platform. If they want to partner with us, we're more than happy to partner. We have Binance Cloud. We have we can deploy a separate exchange. So we typically is a technology provider in this aspect.
Yeah, I love it. Makes a lot of sense. Last question for you. Somebody asked, what is the biggest misconception that people have of you? Like, what's the one thing that maybe people think about CZ and you would say they're either wrong or don't have kind of the truth on? I thought it was a great question.
Sure. It's a very simple one, actually. A lot of people think I control the cryptocurrency price. It's like, I really wish that was true. I mean, like, if that was true, things would be so much easier. Like Bitcoin would be going straight up. And then, so I think one of the biggest misconceptions is like, hey, CZ, pump it. Like, what do you expect me to do? I don't have fiat. I don't trade. So, so that's I think fundamentally there's a lot of misconception that thinking the big exchanges control price. We don't trade. I can't tell you which way the price is going to go. If I could, the price will be way higher right now. So I actually, I'm always bullish. I always think the price is too low. And for our business, the price is much better. It's much better for the price to be higher. So I think that's definitely one of the misconceptions people have. And personally, I'm a very poor trader. I tried this like 10 years, like a decade ago, and didn't work too well. I learned that very early on. So I'm a technology builder. And we provide platforms for people to access liquidity. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions that people have. They think that we actually influence price. We don't. I really wish we could, but we don't.
I can speak for you in that if CZ controlled price, Bitcoin would be at hundreds of thousands of dollars for sure.
For sure. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I think that a lot of people are obviously paying attention to what you guys are building, and you're really pushing the pace of innovation. So keep it up, and we'll have to do this again in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for all the things that you do in the industry. I mean, we talk to each other on Twitter all the time, but I really appreciate what you're doing as well, which is like this distributing high quality information and always pushing the industry forward. So yeah, I appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.